Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is John Kennedy. I am the Economic Recovery Coordinator for the Benton-Franklin Council of Governments, and we at BFCG are really happy to have everyone here for this workshop on applying for EDA funds. And we're very delighted to have Chris LoBosco here, who'll be speaking to us today. And I just wanted to briefly go through the agenda before we start this meeting. We're gonna have a brief introductions. We're gonna introduce our executive director to all of you who just joined us a few weeks ago. And then Chris will go into his presentation for about 20-25 minutes or so. And there's a PowerPoint that he supplied, what he gave me, and then I emailed to you earlier today. And so you should all have a copy of that, and I can provide another copy later after the meeting. And then we'll have plenty of time, for about half an hour or so, for questions, and he'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. So that's it for me. But before I hand it over to Chris, I would like to invite Michelle to say a few words.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Michelle Holt. I'm the new Executive Director for the Benton-Franklin Council of Governments. Today is day 10 for me, so we're in the process of just getting to know the staff and all of our jurisdictional partners and find out how our organization is currently functioning and how we can continue to provide valuable service not only to our member jurisdictions but all of the businesses and organizations that are functioning here in our area. So I'm excited to hear from Chris today about the EDA services and how we can be of support. So I hope you will all reach out as there are opportunities that we can serve, and also help me get to know you and the Tri-Cities. But I'm really happy to be here. So thanks for joining us today, everyone.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. I'll get moving here if that's okay with you. I did share a screen. Somebody sent me a chat if you can't see my screen. Right now it says EDA, Seattle Regional Office. And I just want to say thank you for all of you coming together. You know, my position at EDA, which is a contact for folks in the state of Washington that want to get answers to getting EDA funds, EDA grants. This is great because it allows a type of outreach that normally I don't have. I'm not able to coordinate something like that. So thank you, Michelle, and for your crew for putting this together. I don't see a raise hand option on the in the Zoom chat, but I do see a lot of chats that came in, people introducing themselves. Stephanie, Neil, Matt, Rowan, thank you. And I wish we could meet in person, but someday soon. Let's all hope that will be the case. So, and I do actually recognize some faces from working on other projects, so that's terrific. But again, just please send me a chat with a specific question if you need to, or just unmute yourself and say, you know, Chris, stop. Let's talk about something. Okay. Just for the record, my primary job at the Seattle Regional Office and for the state of Washington is in the capacity as a civil engineer. So I have a lot of infrastructure and capital improvements experience. So you know, feel free in Q&A or offline another time to reach out to me should you need help developing the technical components of a project, okay? Before I move further, there is one other person from EDA that is on this call. It's Laura Ives, and I'll let her introduce herself briefly. She is an economic development specialist at EDA. She lives in Spokane, and so between the two of us, I'm in Western Washington on the Olympic Peninsula, and she's in Eastern Washington. So between the two of us, we are handling trying to do outreach and get information to people. So Laura, if you want to take just a minute to introduce yourself, that would be great.
Sure. Thanks, everyone. As Chris mentioned, I'm also the EDA, and I'm an economic development representative. And so when you submit applications, you know, they'll be assigned to a project officer, and that's usually usually me or another EDS, and we help ensure that your applications are complete and competitive in before prior to them getting through to our investment review committee. So I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to assist Chris in answering questions that anyone has. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Laura. So, just remember that at the Seattle Regional Office, we are in the Western United States mostly. And so we have, quite a few states that we cover, but the two folks you're talking to right now really do represent the state of Washington and your needs. So if you need to talk to my boss or any of my handlers, the area director there is Kirsten Milius. She's at the Seattle Regional Office, okay? This is me. One of the primary functions of today is to break any barriers down between you reaching out to EDA. That's picking up the phone and calling me or sending me an email. I know that we are a federal agency, but we try to be nimble and flexible and available. And truth be told, we do provide a significant amount of technical assistance and support, advice, real consultations about what your chances are on your projects and how they could be more competitive. So again, one of the primary purposes today is to open a two-way communication. So please pick up the phone, call me. If I don't know the answer, if Laura doesn't know the answer, we'll just tell you we don't know, but we'll find the answer for you. Okay. If you don't know, EDA has a website, eda.gov. It is useful. I kind of expect and encourage you to browse through this and see what type of information you can get while you're developing a project, while you're developing an application, before you submit that, and preferably, before you call me so that we have a basis to start from. But please go there and look around. I'm not going to walk you through the website, but call me if you have questions about where you need to find things on here. Okay. One of the things on the website is our funding opportunities. And so I think it's important that before you come to EDA or when you come to EDA, you recognize a funding opportunity that aligns with your project so that your application can align with the requirements of that funding opportunity. They are not very fun to read. They are typically 40 to 50 pages, but there is a lot of actual very useful information there to help you complete your application, get it reviewed by decision makers, and hopefully get it awarded. So just real quick, a lot of you probably know this, but I want to take the time just to tell you about some of the fundamentals. So first of all, who do we fund? We do not fund private business. We fund tribes, nonprofits, municipalities, ports, counties, cities, public works, utility districts, things of that nature. So if you think that you are one of those, then that would make you eligible to apply. It's one of the first requirements. And I think the 5 main things that we do provide funding for include the following. We do provide funding for a comprehensive economic development strategy. You have one with Michelle's group, and I don't know how often, that gets updated annually and probably gets rebuilt about every 5 years, but EDA funds that, that SEDS, the economic development strategy. We also fund a revolving loan program, which I know that this district utilizes. In addition, we provide what I call soft projects or programs that are not construction projects. This could be a workforce training facility or a workforce training program, for example. So we do those types of things. We fund equipment for people, which is not construction, but some people do need to fill their facilities with equipment that is in a program that aligns with EDA's mission. So we will fund equipment. And then, of course, the vast majority of our funds and projects go out to do design and construction of infrastructure projects. A small reminder of when it comes to where do we fund projects, we fund them in distressed regions and distressed communities. That aligns with our goals at EDA. And we are a grant organization. We really don't do any direct loans for construction. So we are really grants. And why do we fund projects? It's important to know that when your application lands at the desk of a decision makers, they fund your projects because they think that you have a credible and predictable measurable economic impact. These are projects that focus on job retention or job creation, economic resilience. They want to know that you have partners and you've done planning, and that basically you align with those missions at EDA, which is to provide economic impact in distressed communities. So you need to make that narrative to EDA when you come to us. Okay, where do you apply, or how do you apply? You do that at grants.gov. I don't spend a lot of time on grants.gov, but I do know that you just can't get an application in unless you go here. If you need technical help with this, please call me and we'll find someone at our office that can give you a hand if need be. And this is where all the government forms are gonna come out of, and you'll put a package together for EDA. Okay. So when you're thinking about applying, again, I would encourage you to call me with a project that you're thinking about, and so we can have an informal discussion about it. If there's red flags, if there's things that don't align, I'll let you know what they are and let you go back and make revisions so that you're efficient and you don't get in a situation where you're denied for something that you could have prevented. Craft your application to match EDA's funding opportunities. I know you have a lot of projects on the shelf, and people are going to try to fit those projects, or going to try to find funding wherever they can get it. But remember, you got to try to match it to what EDA does and what our mission is. So, and I can help you do that. Again, download applications at grants.gov. And when you submit an application to us, you want to characterize the distress that is associated with your region. Washington's a big area. We have a lot of different types of distress, and sometimes those are related to disasters. Some of those are related to COVID, as is the case now. Some of those are related to other factors. So please characterize the distress criteria where you are. And in our preliminary conversations, it's best if you can identify what your offer of matching funds are. I know that bank accounts are not very liquid right now. However, EDA considers a 50-50 match as quite competitive, but we go as high as providing up to 80% of project cost and requiring the recipient to pay the other 20%. But again, it's not as competitive, and so we need to have a talk about what's in your best interest as an applicant on if you can be more competitive closer to the 50-50 range, or if you really need to make a case for 80-20. Okay. So what to expect? You can hold us accountable. Generally, after you get an application in, you can expect a cursory review within 30 to 60 days. Once your application is complete, then we will present it to decision makers on your behalf. We will try to highlight the best components of your application and the best version of yourself to them. And that will generally be done within about 30 to 60 days of your application being considered complete. The deliberations and decisions for each application are competitive. And I think that's important to understand that, feel free to ask me about if your application is competitive and what you could reasonably do to make it more competitive, because it is important. If the decision panel opts to support your specific project, then you'll be required to provide additional information. It's called due diligence. And these will be project-specific submittals that you'll need to give to EDA. And that process can generally take between 3 and 9 months while we do that due diligence before you're formally funded. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna, I talked a lot there. I'm gonna take just a short breather here and see if anybody has any questions about that. And then I may present other materials depending on, just depending on how much time we have and what kind of questions we have. So I'm just going to look at my chat box here, or unmute yourself if you have a question, or if you want me to review anything that was that we just looked at in this PowerPoint. Okay, I don't see here. Okay, so Heather asked about higher education institutions. I don't know if it's a question or a statement, but Heather, it's a good point. Higher education institutions are eligible. So that's good to know. And so if you have a project at a university, you could consider EDA as a possible funding source. So that's great. This is a question from Stephanie, I think. Are there funded projects from the Tri-Cities you could reference as a local example? So I believe Port of Pasco is in the Tri-Cities. And so we have a we have a site improvement project there. And I think they're even on the line here. That would be Steve McFadden if so. But yes, I think to answer your question, we do have projects that are close to home for you that I could look at with you and let you know what those look like, how they were successful, you know, what your neighbors are doing. But I would emphasize this: when I say competitive, it's not so much that you're competitive with the other folks in your county, which you are, but you're mostly competitive with folks throughout the entire state, and even potentially to some extent in the western states, okay, because that is our region. So yeah, I hope that answers the question. I have another question here from Tiffany Scott. She says, can the match come from another federal grant? Typically, the answer to that is no. There are some situations where it's allowable, but for the most part, it's no. Federal loans, however, as a match would be allowable. These are really good questions, by the way. Thank you. Okay, all right, I'm just, I'm scrolling through these questions here to see if there's any others. Okay, that's good. Can you give some examples? This is from Heather. Can you give some examples of funded projects that focus on workforce development and training? Sure. So we have an application. We have an application on board right now that we're working with. Laura and I are working with them. They're in Klickitat County. They're an airport, a small airport, and they want to coordinate. They have a partnership with the community college there, and they want to build an airplane mechanic training facility. And so they need equipment and facilities for that. They need a place where they can put a plane next to a runway. So that is a workforce development partnership and training program, which includes pretty sophisticated partners, a unique site at the airport, and facilities and equipment. So that's my example. Okay, good. All right. So I've been going almost 20 minutes now. Oh, here's another question from Tana. Can you give us the current rule of thumb that EDA uses for expectation of jobs created for dollars granted? Okay, so Tana, I think that is a fair question. And what Tana's pointing out there is that EDA is going to invest somewhere and they want to know what the return on investment is, okay? So first, it's important to know what is the quality of jobs that are being created. Are they high skilled? Are they permanent? Or are they seasonal? Are they low wage, right? So we want to characterize what kind of jobs EDA is buying or helping you buy. We also, however, it's important here to point out that not all communities are created equal. If you are in a very, very distressed community, you're not going to have the same, we don't expect the same return on investment as a community that I would call moderately distressed. Okay, the very, very distressed communities don't have the infrastructure to sort of reap the rewards of that investment as maybe someone that's moderately distressed. So, but you do want examples, right? It says here you want examples. So I would say, generally speaking, it's pretty wide range. I would say that $10,000 to $50,000 per job, I would say, is the range of projects that we fund. So I just want to tell you, projects that we fund projects that create roughly one job for every $10,000 to $50,000 of EDA's funds. Those are our funds. Okay, I hope that answered the question. Carl asked, does EDA use an allocation by state when considering competitive grants? The formal answer is no, we do not. But I think, but we are cognizant that we can't pile money onto a single state and ignore everybody else, but there's no formula for it. So, you know, so we were pretty involved with the campfire rebuild in Northern California. That was very devastating to an entire city. And so I think we were pretty proactive there, and we put significant dollars there because we saw such an impact, such devastation, such opportunity for regrowth, for rebuilding. So, and it's not the same every, you know, some years, some states might get it and other years they might not. We have islands in the Western Pacific that we support. You know, if they get really hit with a hurricane season and there's a disaster declaration, we're going to put money in that region. Okay, but there's no formula for it. But however, Carl, District 6 Congressman asked me to report on CARES Act expenditures in the state of Washington in their district, which is up around Whatcom County and whatnot. And so when I did the research, I found that they were awarded funds pretty proportionate to their population, just for the record. So, okay. All right. Can you share how you develop metrics for evaluating the success of the grant? Who develops the metrics? How are the metrics evaluated and reported to EDA? Heather, that's a great question. And for construction projects, we ask that you have formal beneficiaries in private industry that might benefit from this construction project. We ask them to report to us about 3 times in a decade after the project is built to see if any of the goals were met. There's no requirement that that the goal gets met, but that is a metric for us. And I will be honest, Heather, we don't have a large toolbox of metrics to know how successful our projects are. And I'm probably not the best person to answer that question. So anyway, I hope that helps out a little bit. Thank you. Okay. All right. Good. All right. That was a good Q&A session. I'll show you a couple of other, I think I'm going to show you one other document that I have that I'd like to go through with you. I think this group is probably pretty sophisticated from the standpoint of there's a lot of folks in this room that have applied to EDA, for example. So I'm just going to remind you or show you that here's a project brief that I will give to some applicants. And it answers some of the questions of, you know, what it is I'm looking for to help you apply. But one of the questions that comes up often is, does EDA support this kind of project? I have a project, are you supportive of it? And my answer is EDA doesn't actually really care about what the project is, right? Especially when it comes to infrastructure. Is it broadband? Is it a new road? Is it water, sewer? Is it an industrial park? We're less concerned with what the actual project is, and we're a lot more concerned with what the credible and predictable economic impact will be from investing there. And that can be a difficult narrative to present to EDA. But it's important, and it's the type of thing that decision makers deliberate on, is really understanding what your claim is for economic impact, and if it's credible, and if that's the case, then we'll see if your project is feasible. Is it buildable? Are there environmental concerns? Is the community supportive? Do you have the proper stakeholders? Did you get cost estimating right? Those are all feasibility issues regarding your project, but that's not really a decision on whether we want to fund you or not. So first thing, we want to make sure there's credible economic impact, and then our subject matter experts at EDA will decide if you're a risk, right? If you didn't do enough planning, if you don't have things lined up to handle the money properly and implement the infrastructure. So I'll just look at some of these 7 questions here. You know, in the first question, we're sort of asking, what problem do you want to solve? So I know that you have projects on the shelf that you want to fund. However, the other way to look at it is, what is my economic problem in my backyard, right? And what projects could I develop to solve that problem? So you can go about it either way. And I would remind you that we typically only fund, or I wouldn't say only fund, we like to fund projects that have a comprehensive economic development strategy for their region, and the projects that we're looking at align with that strategy. So we don't really like investing in projects that do not align with a regional strategy, which is usually like 2 or 3 counties, 2 or 3 counties big. So, okay, let's see. All right, I'm gonna keep going here. Number 2 says, describe the proposed project components, keys, players. This can actually be difficult. One of the things, if you come, especially for a construction project, is how credible is your description of components that need to be funded by EDA. You know, I don't know how much time you spent on this, but you could potentially get yourself into a situation where you said, we need to build this, this, and this. It's going to cost $5 million. And we fund you. And then a year and a half later, we find out it's going to cost $10 million. And you're not in a position to fund it. So we're going to take a look. We really want to know the scope of your project. And the more planning you do, the better your scope looks, the more comfortable we feel about moving forward. I'm just going to skip to number 4. When you tell us what your total project cost is, we want it to be credible. And that requires a significant amount of planning. And I know a lot of people will come to us and say, hey, we're preliminary. We don't really know how much it's going to cost. And we understand that, and we want to try to get you there. But I want to remind you that there are other applications out there that are competitive in nature, and they know how much it's going to cost. They've been able to reduce the risk for EDA to get involved with something for construction investment where we don't know where it's going to go and if there's going to be enough money. Number 4, what is the amount of EDA funds requested? This is important. So I would remind you that typically for construction projects, we have a couple of funding mechanisms for it. One is our normal annual budget, which is we call it public works. And we generally only provide about $3 million of EDA's share into a project. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's as high as 5 or more. But I would say, you know, on average, it's not more than $3 million. Now, last year we had a significant inflow of cash related to COVID Recovery Acts, the CARES Act. And in that situation, we were able to participate on a much higher level. We could participate in projects and show as much as $10 million of EDA cost. In some cases, even higher. So it depends on the funding mechanism, but you want to ask for the amount of money that fits the funding mechanism. Otherwise, decision makers in Seattle will not have an appetite to fund you. So let me see what other things we're asking of you when you bring a project to us. Again, number 5 says, what are the expected project impacts supporting economic development? And so this is the big one. If you don't have partners out there, especially private industry partners, that you can really show that they are going to be able to benefit from this investment and bring on jobs, bring on private investment, bring economic resilience to your community, that's really what they're asking here. Number 6 says, what type of project readiness do you have? What has to happen locally before your project can be advanced? So, you know, a lot of projects are complicated, and you may not have all the answers, but EDA is going to really try to make an assessment on, if we put dollars on your doorstep, can you pull the trigger and make it happen efficiently? You know, we do have projects that go south. They just don't work out, and 4 or 5 years go by, and we haven't really seen any. In some cases, haven't even seen construction. So we want to stay away from those things. All right. All right. I'm gonna open it back up to questions and answers. Feel free to use your microphone if you like, if you have that capacity. Okay. I'm not seeing any projects out there. Any questions? Does anybody in this group have a project they'd like to share with the group on something they're considering to go to EDA? We could talk about it a little bit.
Hey, Chris, while people are thinking about a project perhaps
Sure.
you'd like to talk about, would you mind perhaps talking about an example in which someone submitted an application for a project funding that had significant problems, and that might give us an idea of specific things we should avoid?
Sure, absolutely. I'd be happy to let Laura talk about a recent project on Anacortes Island for broadband, if she wants to share that. And Laura, do you care to share about the, I think you called it a slow-moving train wreck at one point, but it ended up ultimately being successful. Even though not funded yet, it looked like it was successful. You care to chat about? So, John, you're looking for, you want to know problem applications and how we got through it, right?
Yeah, yeah. How do we avoid a train wreck? How do we avoid a train wreck?
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So Anacortes was requesting funding for a broadband project. And broadband happens to be kind of a hot topic in the Seattle regional office right now. It's there's a lot of kind of policy decisions being made around broadband. And so this project came in, and to be clear, the project was not inherently flawed so much as necessarily trying to fit it into the EDA mold, and that can sometimes be part of the challenge. And so they came in hoping to put middle mile broadband infrastructure in parts of their city, and part of the challenges were they include within their budget lateral hookups to residential hookups. And EDA doesn't cross over into private property. So that was an example, something we needed to de-scope their project a little bit. We also ran into, again, kind of some policy issues with broadband, and, EDA really likes to create partnerships with other entities, with the private sectors. In this project, we really had to figure out what kind of partnerships were viable, which options had been exhausted. And so, we spent a good amount of time kind of going back and forth with the applicant to again, make that project fit into the EDA mold and really focus on the job creation that would result from it. And so we, like Chris mentioned, we got there. Their project received a favorable determination. But there was a good amount of reworking we needed to do with it. Let me see, are there any kind of follow-up questions on that? Or I'm not sure if that answers the question entirely.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you. And I think we have a question in the chat, Chris.
Okay. This is from Davin. Do you foresee any changes in criteria or prioritization for EDA funding with the Biden administration? Okay, so that's going to be a two-part or more answer probably. So everyone in this group either likely knows, if you watch the news, that there is a significant funding package that has passed in the House and will likely be voted on by the Senate. And so if that happens, I see Seattle's office, or Seattle's office seeing a significant amount of funding coming in the coming few months here, likely more than we saw even a year ago with CARES Act, and likely more investments for infrastructure as opposed to soft projects. So I would say when it comes to prioritization, yes, I would see us spending more of that money on infrastructure and capital improvements, hard assets, property improvement relative to soft projects. And again, that likely will be a significantly larger pile of money than we had a year ago. So I think now is a good time to ask yourself, do I have a project on the shelf? And does it align with EDA? And how ready am I to be competitive should that happen, should funds become available? But those are all questions that, you know, I can answer with you in a one-on-one chat session about your project. Davin, does that, let me see, do you foresee any changes in criteria? You know, I would say just informally, EDA is always assessing, you know, are we really putting the money in the distressed communities? Because sometimes it's hard for them to have a competitive application, right? And it's a bit of a risk for us to just land the money there because it might not end up being rewarded with benefit. So, but I know we have a conversation at our office right now. How can we really support very, very distressed communities in a way that's not risky for us? But I think generally what happens is we end up supporting sort of moderately distressed communities because they have some amount of infrastructure and relationships and partners that it's not quite as risky. We're going to put the money down there and we think we'll see something happen. So anyway, that's my answer, Davin. I will say this about problem projects, John. So I have 2 projects, one in Alaska and one in California. And EDA really could not have seen this coming for them. But both of them are in a situation where they got a positive decision, EDA, but have not yet been funded because they're in their due diligence period. One of them is in a due diligence period of up to 2 years. And the other one is over a year because they didn't fully understand their environmental components of their project until after they got a positive decision from EDA. And EDA says, hey, you guys got to clear this up before we can fund you. And so now we're in a situation where they spend significant amount of time and energy, and this one project is 2 years now where it's not going anywhere, and they still might not get funded if they can't like pull things together there. So I feel bad for them, and I also wonder if maybe they had a different project in their region, maybe we could have done something sooner and had an impact. So, okay. Davin has a follow-up question. Can you define distressed communities? So, Davin, this is not really my area of expertise, and I'm sorry. So, truthfully, I think Laura does it better than I do. But you know, some of the things that we look at is unemployment. We have some unemployment metrics for regions that help people, you know, that help people apply. I'm sorry I can't answer that question better, but perhaps Laura can. But if not, Laura, just say, you know, we're not really well prepared to answer that. So we'll try to get back to you maybe in an email through John's group to everybody to give a little guidance on that. Does that sound fair?
Yeah, and Chris, I can speak to it just briefly.
Okay.
Finding distressed communities. If you look at the current NOFO under the Public Works Program, the CARES Act funding, it talks a little bit about under a regular program, what we're looking for in distressed communities. We are typically looking at unemployment rates, we're looking at per capita income. We can also look at underemployment, and I believe there's 1 or 2 others, but typically we're looking at 2-year average. Kind of 2-year average is a significant part of it, 2-year average unemployment or per capita rates, per capita income rates. And then we were also, opportunity zones are a really big ticket item for us. If you are doing a project located within an opportunity zone or located in close proximity to opportunity zones intended to benefit them, those are good metrics for distressed communities. So hopefully that's helpful.
Thank you, Laura. That was great. You know, in the notice of funding opportunity, as Laura pointed out, I have it in screen share here. There is a section called economic distress criteria. So anyway, that is a resource for you to at least get oriented with the topic. Okay, good. Oh, okay. So Heather asked how one might find a list of opportunity zones. We have that on our EDA website, right, Laura?
We do. Give me a second. I'll go ahead and find a link and share it in the chat box for everyone.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good.
And we still have 20 minutes, so if you have any questions, please, this would be a great time to ask or continue to write in the chat.
And this is Devin. We have several partners in the region, and I know sometimes there's a chicken egg balance where they're looking to EDA for infrastructure funds to build in to bring in a private company, but the private company won't commit unless there's improvements to their property and infrastructure. So do you have any tips or advice for our partners that are kind of in this chicken and egg relationship where they can't bring in the new large employer without the infrastructure, but yet they're not meeting the EDA criteria for funding to build in that infrastructure?
I don't know if I have good advice for that. I have seen a couple of applicants try and get more than one lead. So especially if you're in a multi-parcel industrial park, having 2 or 3 or 4 leads, and then if only 1 or 2 of them drop out, at least they're in a situation to make something happen again. However, I will say that often the most competitive and often the funded projects are ones that have been in planning stages for a year or more, locally where you are. So that's quite a bit of relationship building and trying to find stakeholders that are really committed to landing in your backyard. I know it's not easy, and I'm sorry I don't have a better answer. Yeah, I'm sorry, Deb, I just don't have a better answer on how to manage that. Because EDA can be pretty firm on that topic, right? But, who are the stakeholders? Who are the beneficiaries? How legitimate are they? Are they going to sign a master lease agreement before we move forward with the funding, And so EDA in general shies away from projects that are speculative in nature. And so it does require significant more planning and commitment from the stakeholders.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so it looks like there are 3. Wait, does someone say here there's 3 opportunity zones in the Tri-Cities, 1 in Pasco, 2 in Kennewick, is what it sounds like?
Yes.
Okay, all right. I'm just curious, does anybody have any projects on the shelf for those opportunity zones in this room? Don't show all your cards, but. Anyway.
Actually, this is Maria Serra with the City of Pasco, and within that opportunity zone, the City of Pasco has a project that is actually expecting award from EDA. So we are well advanced in the process of getting there. We're just awaiting for the letter to show up this week. So.
Okay, good. So congratulations. That was one of the distress criteria you probably used in your application, was to link yourselves to the opportunity zone.
I am actually not positive that is the case, but.
Okay. All right. Great example. Thank you.
And Chris, I think we have a question from Stephen McFadden in the chat.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, so Stephen, for the potential pandemic funding on the horizon, the question is, will EDA be seeking socioeconomic data that demonstrates the impact of COVID during the past year? I would say likely, yes. It's been it's a good point. It's been more than a year now, okay? So we are expecting to see some metrics from communities on what's happened in the past year, whereas a year ago, we didn't have metrics yet, right? The distress was really assumed, for sure, but we weren't sure what level, and we were pretty liberal about saying, distress happened here because of COVID. Now, but now it's been a year. So yeah, if you really want to make yourself a competitive application and you can show metrics for distress as it relates to COVID, I mean, that will really reap rewards for you in your application. So yeah, we are looking for it. We might not require it, but we're definitely looking for it. Okay. I was trying to find a map of opportunity zones, but I couldn't find it on our website, but mostly because I'm not as oriented as I should be. Okay.
I dropped HUD's map in there if anybody needs it.
Say that again.
I dropped HUD's opportunity zone map in the chat if anybody needs it.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you for that. Okay, so there I can see the 3 now. Yeah. All right. Okay. Good. All right. I'm not seeing any other questions, or feel free to leave comments as well. Don't have to. Yeah.
I have a comment. Can you hear me?
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
I think my name is Gustavo Gutierrez Gomez, and I'm actually the Executive Director of Downtown Pasco Development Authority. We do have a business incubator model in a 10,000 square feet facility, which is a commercial kitchen. And even though I'm only been here for 1 year, I can tell you that the potential, we can do way more. But of course, a lot of the staff has been here for many years. So anyway, the reason why I don't have many questions right now is because it is a lot of information. So I need to, take the information, read it, digest it, and then come out with something that we can execute, of something that we can use, something is going to be tangible. But I can tell you that this area overall, there's big changes coming to this area. So I think the opportunities, you'll probably see us applying for something, because even our equipment is really old in our kitchen.
Okay.
So I can see the potential eventually to either come up with new programming or just help with the infrastructure and some changes for the business incubator model that we already have. So that's why I don't have more questions, but I've been reading in some of the stuff, and I think we can come up with something that the city likes it because they own the building, and something that will benefit our business entrepreneurs here in Pasco. So thank you.
Thank you. And that, Gustavo, that's a good comment, because, we do quite regularly, or at least often enough, we support programs that already exist. We replace equipment that is aged, right? Because let's face it, often they have proven that they can have an impact, a continuing impact, and the risk for EDA is low often. So yeah, it doesn't have to be a brand new project, a brand new facility, right? Sometimes it's just revamping something that is working. Thank you.
This is Devin again with the Council of Governments. And I just wanted to mention to all my friends and partners on the, or within the Zoom, per Stephen's question about tracking distressed communities that have been negatively impacted because of COVID. At the Council of Governments, we've had some very productive conversations with Aisha, our regional economist, and we're starting to collect that data. So for my partners, as you're looking and thinking about applying to EDA funds, don't hesitate to reach out to us for data, and we can be a resource for you as you start building your applications for EDA funding. Thank you.
Hey, Chris, this is Carl Dye from Tridec. I just thought of a question I don't think we've gotten into now, but around the country or in the Seattle district, do you guys have any examples of possibly funding accelerators? I mean, I think Gustavo just had a great question about like incubators, and we know like going back to the 80s, the EDA funded, nationwide incubators and stuff, but like, what about technology cluster accelerators, things like that? We've been having some discussions about that. Obviously, we have PNNL here in the Tri-Cities, and ways that we can all work together to help commercialization and form new companies and help them grow and stuff. Is there any examples of like EDA programs that might support something like that?
I'm sure there are. Again, it's not in my wheelhouse. So I'm sorry about that. But I will try to find some examples and answers for you. But I do know that occasionally we have some challenges. When I say challenge, EDA offers up what's called a challenge, and sometimes it's on a national level through headquarters, right? And those trickle down from there. I think we had one called the Sprint Challenge, and so. But I would say that at the Seattle office in the state of Washington, we're not actively looking for those. Not that we're against them. It's not the hot topic right now. I don't know why, but this is probably, you're mostly talking about soft projects, probably some equipment or no equipment.
Potentially, I don't know that there's a good model. I was just looking for examples maybe that we could learn from. We've had some conversations with different technologies that have come out of Pacific Northwest National Lab, and just
okay.
Kind of looking to brainstorm ideas of anywhere else that you've done it. We had or DOE hosted a undersecretary here before the end of the year. We had a conversation with them. We asked them that question, like, what have you seen amongst the national labs as like good accelerator models? And we're getting some feedback on that, but just, it's kind of top of mind. So I thought I'd ask.
Okay. Let's touch base offline and see if I can find some examples for you. Yeah, sorry, but.
No, that's okay. That's great. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Oh, okay. Stop sharing. There we go. Okay, so another link that Laura put up there was Stats America. So that's a good resource. I did turn my screen sharing off. Sorry if that was aggravating. Okay, and yeah, okay, John, I'll certainly follow your lead here.
Yeah, I was saying if there's anybody else who had an idea or want to make a comment, we have a few more minutes left. But if no one else has any more questions or comments, then I really appreciate you coming to this workshop and participating. And we'll stick around for a few more minutes if you want to carry a conversation. But overall, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.